Okay guys, welcome to our next class. I'm trying a different medium, so let's see if it works. Today we're talking about Isabel Allende's End of Clay We Are Created. Isabel Allende is a Chilean author. She's known for writing in the style of magic realism. So magic realism is a specific type of fiction. It's not quite fantasy, and it's not your classic fiction. In some ways, magical realism is a realistic story that has elements of um, fantasy or the supernatural. The official definition of magic realism is a literary or artistic genre in which realistic narrative is combined with surreal elements of dream or fantasy. So I stumbled across Isabel Allende when I was probably in college, and I fell into the House of the Spirits. The House of the Spirits, basically you have a character who is a mother, but she's also a mermaid. Sounds crazy, I know. But the idea is that it is not crazy to the people of this world. So everything else is normal, except this one thing that's kind of fantastical, i.e. her being a mermaid. Isabel Allende is from Chile, just like Pablo Neruda, which we just talked about. And most of her stories are either loosely autobiographical or loosely historical. But then she layers on this magic realism on top of it. So when we get to End of Clay We Are Created, it is a fictional account of a true story. So in 1985, in Colombia, not Chile, a volcano erupted. The volcano started to melt the ice on the mountains, and it resulted in mudslides, which several of the villages at the bottom of the volcano were completely submerged in a matter of minutes. I believe something like over 20,000 people were killed at that time. But there was one girl who becomes the focus of all of the news. She is trapped in the mudslide, but she's not dead. Her face, her shoulders, and some of her torso is above the mudslide, and people are trying to help her get out. Because of this, it becomes a very heartbreaking news story, but unfortunately nobody actually comes and helps her. So the story is about Rolf, as a reporter, going to the site of this destruction and trying to get his story. His lover, who is the narrator in the story, is telling us how she sees it through the television screen. Because she can't be with him, all she has is what she sees on TV. Now, this is a really interesting point of view. So, point of view means who is speaking and telling this story. So, for example, when we hear stories in 1001 Nights, let's say, the first part we're hearing it through an omniscient narrator. That is, someone who's above it, who's saying what Scheherazade did, what the vizier did, what the king does. But then when we drill down, we have Scheherazade as the narrator, and then we have characters who are narrators. So basically is who is telling the story. So in this point of view, we have Rolf's girlfriend or lover, it's not made extremely clear, telling the story. So point of view can come in a couple ways. It can be first person, that is, it's my story and I'm telling you what happened. It could be second person, or it could be third person. Third person is usually an observer who's telling the story. Okay, so back to as end of Clay We Are Created. So Rolf goes all over the world. He's fearless. He's just checking out all of the crazy events, the catastrophes, the wars, the natural disasters without blinking an eye. But then he sees Azucena, the little girl who's trapped in a mudslide, and things change for him. He puts his camera down, and instead of recording her like everybody else is doing, he becomes part of the story. He becomes committed and emotionally attached to this little girl. So much to unpack here. We have to talk about Rolf. Rolf, who's fearless and just runs in the face of danger towards the danger as opposed to away from it, has become weak. He's become vulnerable. I think she represents to him his sister Katharina, that he abandoned, fleeing his abusive father. And in some ways I feel like he's like, I'm not going to abandon this little girl the way I abandoned my sister. Another note, I hope you caught it, but there was a reference to 1001 Nights in this novel. You know, I always put all of these pieces together for a reason. The narrator says, and the narrator is Eva Luna. It's from a collection of short stories called Eva Luna. Quote, I was present when she taught Rolf to pray, and when he distracted her with the stories I had told him in 1001 Nights beneath the white mosquito netting of our bed. I think that's really important because the power of the story plays itself out so heavily here, and in all the stories that we've read, honestly. And I think that this really encapsulates how intertextuality works. I don't know if I've given you this vocabulary before, but we'll do it again if I haven't. Intertextuality means the ways that other texts inform the text that you read. And I use the word text to mean anything. Movies, songs, books, poems. You have to have a knowledge of what came before in order to understand it. So, for example, if a rapper uses a line from an iconic rapper, like Jay-Z likes to use Notorious B.I.G. lines, you won't get the impact of that unless you are familiar with Biggie. If you watch a movie and they reference another movie, Deadpool is notorious for this, when he references the other Marvel movies and lets us know that, you know, they can't be in here because of ownership rights and that sort of thing. If we don't know that, if we don't know those other movies, it totally goes over our heads. So intertextuality means that your previous experience with other texts helps you understand the text that you're looking at right now. So when she says, I told him in 1001 Nights beneath the white mosquito netting of our bed, if you haven't read 1001 Nights, you wouldn't understand how important that is. The distraction of all of those stories that Scheherazade tells the king is what Rolf is trying to do for Azucena. I mentioned the ineffectual government that exists in this story. We're reading this story and no one is helping. People are just watching her, recording her. But I think the most important part is when the president comes to see her. And he arrives in this safari jacket, which is tan. He arrives and waves to people and gives um, a wonderful speech, but he never touches her. He only speaks of her as a symbol of the country, as though she's a thing, not a person. But why would he think of her as a person? She's from a poor village that means nothing to him and his term as president. And I'll read you that particular scene. He waved to her with the limp statesman hand, and the microphones recorded his emotional voice and paternal tone as he told her that her courage had served as an example to the nation. Rolf Karl interrupted to ask for a pump, and the president assured him that he would personally attend to the matter. Sure. We all know that this is going to be a tragedy. There's no way of saving Azucena. But at the end, we feel the impotence of both Rolf and Eva Luna. Quote, I recognize the precise moment at which Rolf gave up the fight and surrendered to the torture of watching the girl die. I was with them, 3 days and 2 nights, spying on them from the other side of life. I was there when she told him that in all her 13 years, no boy had ever loved her, and that it was a pity to leave this world without knowing love. Rolf assured her that he loved her more than anyone could love anyone, more than he loved his mother, more than his sister, more than all the women who had slept in his arms, more than he loved me, his life companion, who would have given anything to be trapped in that well in her place, who would have exchanged her life for Azucena's. And I watched as he leaned down to kiss her poor forehead, consumed by a sweet, sad emotion he could not name. I felt how in that instant both were saved from despair, how they were freed from the clay, how they rose above the vultures and helicopters, how together they flew above the vast swamp of corruption and laments, how, finally, they were able to accept death. Rolf Karl prayed in silence that she would die quickly, because such pain cannot be borne. I want to leave you with the ending of the story because I think it will help inform the next story that we're going to read in Ngugi wa Thiong'o's Wedding at the Cross. This has to do with the loss of identity. So Eva says, quote, "You're back with me, but you're not the same man. I often accompany you to the station, and we watch the videos of Azucena again. You studied them intently, looking for something you could have done to save her, something you didn't think of in time. Or maybe you studied them to see yourself as if in a mirror, naked. Your cameras lie forgotten in a closet. You do not write or sing. You sit long hours before the window, staring at the mountains. Beside you, I wait for you to complete the voyage into yourself, for the old wounds to heal. I know that when you return from your nightmares, we shall walk hand in hand as before." I think this is extremely powerful because she is understanding his grief. She's supporting him, and she understands that it's going to take a time for him to come back to the man that she loves, the man that she knows, the man that she's built a life with. We're going to see something similar, but maybe not quite as optimistic when we reach Wedding at the Cross. So I want you to consider that. So that was a pretty intense story. I mean, it's a heartbreaking story, but I think it's beautiful and perhaps apt for this time when we're dealing with so much crisis and so much death. Um, I this is a story I never take off of my syllabus. I think it's important to talk about, and also to talk about our obsession with looking through a lens. We love to look at things through our camera. We take pictures of our food, we take pictures of parties, we take pictures of catastrophes, and yet we don't experience them. When Rolf puts the camera down, he actually begins to experience things. He begins to feel. It is something that I think in our contemporary age we need to think about. When are we a spectator and when are we part of the experience? I am asking that you guys look at some of the discussion questions that I've set up for you. These are questions to use for our discussion thread, but also to inspire you for your assignment attached to this. I believe this is a note-taking assignment, but these might help inspire you to talk more about the piece stuff that I may not have covered in today's online lecture. So here are some of them. What is the function of the president in this story? So talk to me about how you felt about the president. What is the trapped girl's relationship to Rolf in the narrator? How does the narrator address Rolf in the last paragraph of the story, the one that I just read? In what ways could this be significant in the story? Think about how the story begins and how the story ends. What is the importance of the narrator's relationship to Rolf? How does hearing about it through her eyes affect how we connect to the story? Should we criticize the way other reporters and media personnel remain mostly passive to Azucena and her situation? How does belief appear in the story? What is the takeaway from this? What is the significance of the title of the story? Aha, you should be thinking about your Bible. And of clay we are created. How does empathy fit in here? How does her situation affect Rolf and the narrator? Does she become a martyr or a moment of facing personal terrors? Discuss whether reporters should be emotionally involved in their stories, as in the case in Allende's story. How do you believe emotional involvement might affect a writer's or reporter's journalistic approach? Is this a tragedy? Why or why not? Okay, so I can't leave you on like a sad note. So I'm going to let one of my roommates tell you a joke and hopefully lighten the mood with this very heavy story. So hopefully Baxter will be willing to chat with you for a little bit. Hey y'all, it's Baxter. What's up? Dr. Walker asked me to tell you a joke, so I guess I'm gonna tell you a joke. Now, don't get mad at me if it's bad. She comes up with them. She thinks they're funny. I think they're kind of corny. But, that's just me. All right, here we go. A grandmother was pushing her little grandchild around Walmart in a buggy. Each time she put something in the basket, she would say, "And here's something for you, Diploma." Or, "This will make a cute little outfit for you, Diploma." And so on. Finally, a shopper came up and said, "What are you talking about? Why do you keep calling your grandchild Diploma?" The grandmother replied, "I sent my daughter to Virginia Tech for college, and this is what she came home with. So it's Diploma."